Hello, and welcome to the Broken Quill. Wow. Okay. So, James wanted to do these introductions, and he did his first, and, well, for this next part, I highly recommend going to listen to his if you haven't already, because if you do, you might understand the context of what I'm going to say next. Excuse me. How the fuck do I follow that? My apologies for that. I needed to get that out. But the question is real. How do I follow that? I'm sure to those of you that are regular readers, you can listen to his story of himself and recognize his ability. His way with words and the power he can invoke with simile and metaphor, vastly superior to mine, I might add. So I beg the question, how do I follow that? That's a big part of the anxiety of being a writer, I find. Shakespeare, Verne, Tolkien, Pullman, Kipling, the greats of our past, 100 million new books made every 10 years, and a small handful of names immortalized in the annals of literature. I find it constantly begs the question, as a writer, how do we follow that? How do we break through the sea to become something important and meaningful? How do we change minds and hearts? How do we make ourselves known? How do we press our craft into the field when the greats tower over us like colossal shadows? How do we follow that? James is a bohemian. He writes with a prose that I could never pull from, and his characters speak to him in ways that mine simply do not. Fire flows from his fingertips, thousands of words at every time, every writing session, while I scrape and claw at my own soul and mind, trying to bleed myself onto the page in a vain attempt to pull together even a single coherent sentence. Despite this difficulty, I've always wanted to be a writer. I wrote fan fiction in my youth. I think the first book I ever wrote was an Animorphs fan fiction. I remember my brother trying to rip it from my hands so that he could read it, wanting to support me, and I screamed at him and clung till the pages tore between us because it wasn't finished. The book wasn't finished, and that was important to me. I never did finish it, though. I tried writing other stories as I grew up, and once I was likened in my writing to that of Dan Brown. He claimed he was trying to insult me, but I was jubilant. Dan Brown comparing me to a best-selling author? How is that an insult? Except, as my literary forays have shown me as I delved into the great classics, Dan Brown is woefully simple. He was best-selling because his books were easy to read and, above all, fun, not because they were great dives into the human psyche or man's inhumanity to man, as the classic goes. So, that's my style. Simple, basic Dan Brown. I am not an artist. I write, and I create, and I forge worlds, and I wield magic within my stories, but my prose are simple, my metaphors without depth, and my themes almost non-existent. I write popcorn. I write stories that make the reader feel good, but they do not challenge. They do not bend the mind, stir the soul, and delight the core with creativities. They are simply fun. That is why James is the bohemian and I'm the idiot. But is that a bad thing? Is writing popcorn a bad thing? Is writing something that isn't about sending a message inherently lesser? Perhaps there's an argument for that, but is it important? Is popcorn important? I have a thought on this. Popcorn is society. It's the work of the masses, and it's the everyday guy. It's the Marvel movies, the fun action thriller. It's the Harry Potters and the Divergent books. But does being part of this lack worth? When did Fahrenheit 451 change views on censorship? When did Animal Farm destroy economic models? When did the greats ever change the world? They penetrate you to your core and can change a person, but the world seems staunchly stubborn against such efforts. But what about popcorn? Popcorn introduces to the masses what it wants to normalize. Popcorn has introduced LGBTQ issues and allowed people to become used to seeing them in media. They've shown minorities in better lights and have helped calm racial tensions. They have allowed the world different perspectives. I say popcorn can change the world. I am not an artist. I'm not a bohemian, I'm an idiot with a keyboard, and I think I'm happy with that. I started this asking, how do I follow that? How do we follow art? I tried writing my own book with meaning and depth, and James helped me with its skeleton, but when it came to writing it, I couldn't even get out a page. I couldn't do it. I'm not an artist, so how do those of us that love to write, that wish to delve into this field, accept the fact that we may never rise above? How do we stand in the same line as the greats and now feel sad that we aren't shoulder to shoulder? How do we see their great work and compare it to our own? How do we follow that? We don't. That's my answer. We don't. I cannot write art as assuredly as James cannot write popcorn, as Shakespeare could not write a bunk play, as Verne could not write something that wasn't gripping and mechanically fantastical, and Lovecraft could not write something that did not quake the soul with fear of the unknown. I cannot write art. This introduction is supposed to be about why I write, what I think about when I write, how writing affects me. I didn't focus on this because the answer is far too short for a YouTube video and far too simple. I write for two people, and two people alone, myself and a single stranger. I write so that one person can pick up one of my books, read it, and smile. Nothing more, nothing less. I am a popcorn writer. I write fluff. I write silly adventures. I am not an artist. And I don't need to be. How do I follow that? I don't. I just write. Thank you. I hope that was worth something. If it was, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and we look forward to seeing you here again.